But the guy's got to trust that I'm going to work hard, because if I'm going to ask them to come lift in the morning, go to meetings all day, go to class all day, and go to practice and work their butts off for 2 hours, I better be willing to do as much work as I can with what I have, you
Yeah.
know? And I think that's the biggest thing. It doesn't matter what profession you're in, or if I'm a football player, if I'm the football coach, like that's how you earn respect, is by how hard they're going to work.
Episode 107 featured Coach Branden Jakubcin, the Associate Head Coach and Defensive Coordinator at Heidelberg University. For more content like this, be sure to like and subscribe.
Thanks for coming on, Coach.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
So, Coach Jakubcin just completed his 18th season at Heidelberg University, where he's the Associate Head Coach and Defensive Coordinator. So, to officially get things started, Coach, can you just share with the audience a little bit about your background and how you got involved in your current role? And I know you said you've been there for almost half your life at this point.
Yeah,
So, would
100%.
love to learn about that.
Yeah, definitely. So I came here as a player, and unfortunately, after the 2006 season, I had a knee surgery, and following that up, we had a new head coach come in, and I had really only known him for weightlifting. I knew him for like 4 months, and I went to get my physical for the summer, and the doctor was like, "You probably shouldn't play football again." So knowing it was Mike Hallett, who's at Toledo now, Coach Hallett, I called him up in July and was like, "Hey, doctor said I probably shouldn't play football," and he was like, "Okay, you want to be a student coach?" It was that quick. Like he didn't say like, "Oh, well, we'll figure it out." No, he's just like, "You want to be a student coach?" And I said, "Sure," because I wanted to be around my friends and hang out. So I did that year. I helped out with the inside linebackers, which ironically enough was coached by Coach Donaldson, who's our head coach now. So
Oh,
I
really
was
cool.
under him for 2 years. I coached the inside linebackers, and then I GA'd for 2 years here, coaching the outside linebackers. And then 2011 was my first season full time, and I coached the DBs. So I went DBs. I've coached the DBs ever since. I was special teams coordinator for a couple of years in there, and then when Coach Hallett left to go to Toledo, Coach Donaldson was the defensive coordinator, and I was a special teams coordinator, and we kind of traded jobs. So he became the head coach and took over special teams, and I took over the defense. So this was my 8th season as defensive coordinator.
Nice. So, can you tell me about that experience coming in as a player and then just transitioning directly into coaching?
Well, I don't know how much you know about the history of Heidelberg, but in the early 2000s, we were not very good. And I'm talking, I lost more games in one football season than I lost in 4 years of high school. So it was a tough transition to go from that. Now we had good coaches when we weren't winning very many games. Like there's guys that are D1 coaches, guys that have been prominent coordinators at D3 and D2 levels. We just weren't a very good football team. We didn't have a lot of great players, but we had a new coach come in. Coach Hallett came in 2007, and literally the team that we won 0 games with the year before, we won 4 the next year, and it
Wow.
was the same team. There was a couple freshmen playing here and there, but it was literally the same guys. You know, Different coaches came in and kind of helped us push us along. But the transition going from being a player to a student coach was better than I thought it was going to be, because starting off you're sitting here going like, I'm going to coach guys that I was a junior, so there was kids older than me that I was trying to coach.
Yeah.
And so, but it's kind of the one thing, you got to treat them with respect, and you get respect back. I can't talk to them like I'm a 10-year vet at coaching. I got to talk to them like I'm the same dude sitting in your math class with you. Because that's what's going to happen before practice. We're sitting in class together, and then I'm the one blowing the whistle, yelling at you when practice is going on. So there's got to be a trust or respect level to that. But the whole transition was great, because it was the growing of not just me learning how to coach football, but we went from winning no games to slowly winning 4 games and 4 games and 4 games, and all of a sudden we're over 500. In 2010, 2011, we start winning 6, 8, 9 games in 2012, and you're sitting here going like, oh, this is how we turn around a program.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I just stepped into a program that we were 8-2 and 9-1 every year, and you're like, oh, this coaching stuff's easy. Like, no, we were at the bottom floor. We were figuring out how to weight lift and how to win games, and how to play 60 minutes of football. So it was a great time for me looking back, because I got kind of baptized by fire, getting into learning how to coach football with a program who was learning how to win.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's interesting. You were talking about having a program start from the bottom and building it up, because with my experience at Gettysburg, I had a similar playing experience. I came from a pretty good high school in
Mhm.
Philadelphia, go to Gettysburg, and then we were 3-7, and then went 1-9 the next 2 years. And my senior year was actually the COVID year, so
Yeah.
we never even got a season,
Oh, wow.
unfortunately. But the moral of the story was like just learning. Obviously it's not how it went, but like it's not how we expected it to go, but like
Mhm.
learning the process of like, hey, how do we try to turn this around? And those guys at Gettysburg haven't had much more success in terms of number of wins, but like I still keep in touch with the coaches there, and they're starting to turn things around, and it's encouraging to see. We're getting some better talent in there,
Mhm.
and just hearing about your story, like coming in early and as a student athlete, then a student coach, and now a coach full time. It's pretty cool to hear that. Um, so what would you say, like in your experience, would be some of the top lessons that you've learned? For example, like would it be just like focus or vision, or what exactly were you thinking?
I think my biggest thing, the cliche part of it is just hard work. Like that's the one thing that Coach Hallett instilled when he got here was like, we have to outwork you. Like whatever we've been doing for the last 4 years has not been working. And I'm going to come in, and first thing we're going to do is we're going to start lifting in early in the morning, and we're going to learn how to work, and then you're going to learn how to be disciplined, and we're going to learn those type of things. And I think that's something that's really carried on for me now, because as a coach, like I don't want to put half into it. Like I can't sit there and think that guys are going to trust me to put a game plan together, knowing that I'm working 9 to 5.
Yeah,
Like if they don't see me in the office after practice, so they don't see me in the office before their classes start, like how can they trust me to put together a good game plan if I'm, only no, you don't got to sit in your office and grind for 18 hours a day, or because truthfully, you're probably not working 18 hours of that day, you're just sitting around the whole time. But the guys got to trust that I'm going to work hard, because if I'm going to ask them to come lift in the morning, go to meetings all day, go to class all day, then go to practice and work their butts off for 2 hours, I better be willing to do as much work as I can with what I have, you
yeah,
know. And I think that's the biggest thing. It doesn't matter what profession you're in, or if I'm a football player, if I'm the football coach, like that's how you earn respect, is by how hard they're going to work, and same thing goes into a meeting, same thing goes into film studies, same thing goes into the weight room. The players have to see you giving that amount of effort into your job if you want that out of them, you know.
yeah,
So I think that's a big one. And then just learning how to coach. One thing that Coach Hal used to always said is either you're coaching it or you're allowing it.
yeah,
And that was one thing that always hit me, because it's like, man, if we're struggling covering a passing route, or if we're struggling with this coverage, either I'm teaching it wrong, or I'm just letting them get by because I don't want to correct them,
yeah,
and that you kind of toe that line of like, okay, what's constructive criticism and what's something that I got to get on them about, and you're sitting here, oh, if I don't say anything, I just let it go, then you give up a big play or something like that happens, so that was one thing, I'll say with Coach Hallett. If from when I was a student coach, he treated me like I was a full-time coach. And
yeah,
sometimes it was great because I had a lot of responsibility. Then also sometimes it stunk because I'm sitting here going like, why are you so hard on me? I literally just left stats class to come here and coach, and you're yelling at me, you know. But no, it made me understand football, made me understand being a football coach, made me understand, what it takes to go into running a successful program, but also you're demanding stuff out of your assistant coaches, your student coaches, your graduate assistants, because in order for our program to succeed and win, it's got to be from the top down, you
yeah.
know. So I'd say,
And
yeah.
and I think just hearing about your story and some of the lessons you learned, it comes down to relationships at the end of the
Mhm.
day. You know, relationships not only between yourself and the coaching staff, but also between you and the players. And just like you were saying, your players need to have trust in you that you're doing your job just like you're asking them to do their job. And anybody that's successful, look at the most successful coaches out there. Anybody that's at that top level has that level of trust that's almost like and it's not quite like a friendship. Like I'm sure you can attest to this too. Like you have to know like the time and the
Mhm.
place to like be friendly and like be cool with the guys, but also like there's a time and a place for like business too. Um, so I'm sure you've seen that as well too in your experience.
Yeah, I think that's, just looking at our program, telltale sign of, I think, of a successful program is when if you came on campus on a Tuesday at noon, there's going to be kids hanging out in the office.
Yeah,
And sometimes it's just like, hey, really don't feel like walking back to my dorm and I got class in 30 minutes. I'm just going to chill on the couch in the office and watch TV. But if our players can feel comfortable enough to be around us during the day, then you start building that relationship. And yeah, like you said, you got to understand kind of the authoritative figure to when I can have fun, and things like that. But I think it really goes into like, as long as the players believe that we have their best interests at heart and we're going to put them in positions to succeed, but then also they know, like I said, that we're going to put our work in and our time in for them. Like
yeah,
there's been lots of times where guys are just sitting here on the couch watching TV or just sitting on their phones, but they're in here,
yeah,
and for us, it's like, okay, well, that's a good thing because for some of these guys, especially out of state guys or guys from a couple hours away, like we are the father, we are the uncle, we're the brother, we're the whoever that they're closest to, because if something goes good or something goes bad, we're literally the closest people to them.
yeah.
So a lot of times you have those easy conversations. Sometimes you got to have the hard conversations with them. But if we have a relationship, it makes those harder conversations a little bit easier if you have earned the trust of each other and respect of each other.
Definitely. And I think it all starts with just caring about the kids beyond just football. And I had somebody else on the podcast a few days ago. They were just talking about, as simple as just asking them about their life outside of football. How's school going? How's your girlfriend?
Mm-hmm.
How's everything else going? So I think the more that you can do that and also balance between, showing them how much you care about as a person, but also on the football side, I think the more successful that you'll be, at least, what I've seen from talking with some successful coaches too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you got to get to know your players,
Yeah.
and that's what it comes down to, because like in coaching, you're going to have the guys that you need to yell at, and you have the guys that you need to put your arm around and talk to them,
Yeah.
because everybody responds differently to success. Everybody responds differently to adversity, and you got to find a way to figure out how to coach every kid,
Yes,
and
sir.
you got to be stern on them, and you be stern on them. And if you got to love them up and put your arm around them to get what you need out of them, then that's what you got to do. But you don't learn that about your players unless you actually talk to them.
Right. Definitely. So any last words, coach, you want to share with the audience today?
That's a that's a tough one. My biggest thing is, I love to see people playing football. Love to try to continue the sport and keep it, growing. I always feel like sometimes the sport's getting attacked, whether it's with rules or penalties or other things that go into it. But football is one of the greatest sports in the world. It teaches you a ton of life lessons. Everything from team to love to respect to discipline. It builds a whole bunch of we call them championship characteristics, and the game of football teaches you a lot of that stuff. And the two biggest things is it teaches you, one, how to be a teammate and be a team player. I guess it teaches a lot of things. My biggest one's teammates, team players. Number two is hard work. And number three is handling adversity and success, because I think those are things not just in football, but in any sport you play, but also life, that are some of the biggest things,
Yeah.
and football is just a great sport. I didn't think when I was going to be, you know, 19, 20 years old that they're going to say, hey, do you want to be a football coach? Um, I thought I was going to play shortstop for the Indians. That was my
Yeah.
career goal growing up, then here I am, 18 years later coaching football. So,
Yeah. And last point, I just wanted to bring this up because I really liked what you said. It's a lot of people talk about how you handle adversity. And I think it's just important to know, like, how do you handle success? And being from Philadelphia, I think the Eagles, it's probably a great example of that
mhm.
because, the Eagles had great success last year. We were 10-1. And then, well, everybody knows what happened this for the last 7 games. There
Yeah,
was a bit of a collapse there.
yeah.
So I think that's also important to understand is not only how do you handle adversity, but how do you handle success?
Yeah, I mean, the greatest quotes that I have, that we have in our championship manual, is that adversity and success are like a sports page in the newspaper,
Yeah.
only there for one day.
Right.
So even if the worst thing in the world happened to you tomorrow, no one's going to talk about it. Same
Definitely.
thing, like on Saturday, we won a football game on a last second field goal. By Sunday, no one's talking about it. It's not in the newspaper again. They didn't run the same story the next day and say, "Oh, by the way, if you didn't see it on Saturday, Heidelberg won again."
Yeah.
Like once it's over, 24 hours are over, then we're on to the next. You
Yeah.
know, and so I just being able to handle that stuff. And yeah, we celebrate our victories here, but same thing with our losses. We can't sit here after 24 hours and be like, "Oh, we won. This week's going to be easy."
Yeah.
You know, or dwell on your losses after 24 hours. So,
For sure. Awesome, coach. Well, thank you very, very much for sharing today. Best of luck as you're recruiting, and thanks again for being on the podcast.